will be a lot of open burning, and with all of what that emits. And there's a projected threefold growth in open burning of plastics, greenhouse gas emissions, and the use and disposal, which would account for 19% of the total emissions budget allowable if we are to limit global warming to 1.5. Thank you. Shall I stay here?
Take some questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Take some questions.
Thank you very much. That was a very insightful presentation. My question is on informality. As a formal actor in government, and having realized the importance that informality plays in our resilience, how are you able to navigate it? And were you able to convince the formal sector that informality has a place, and maybe then integrate it into formality? I don't know then, but just speak to your experience on informality.
Okay, thank you. It was not easy, but I tried. And the first thing I had to do, I discovered to my dismay, was to educate not the public, but my peers, especially people in cabinet, and then people at the governorate level, and then it trickles down to municipal level. And then I discovered it's not a straightforward issue like what I presented. It's more complex because it's about transparency and contracts, money. So it's much easier to do it when you're outside of government. When you're in government, you suddenly hit with, oh my goodness, the laws that govern contracts, the tendering process of contracts, the tendering process of buildings, the acquisition of land, the tenure issues. It becomes a much more complicated story than when you're working on one neighborhood and you're advocating for blah, 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 like all of this. But happily, I must say that at least with the informal housing story, we were able to bring on board the Minister of Housing and the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister was originally the Minister of Housing. So he understood informality of housing. He was also a businessman. He understood investments and credit and all that. And he understood the fallacy, pardon my choice of word, of moving people out of the city. And he actually got the cabinet to issue a decree for the first in situ upgrading of a neighborhood where a part is recyclers and the rest is just regular informal, 1 million people. He understood that to move 1 million people out is madness. And why do that when, in fact, he asked me to go get pulse the people about would they be willing to finance with the government an upgrading in situ, and they were. So because we came back to him with this piece of data, we passed a decree in the cabinet to upgrade a 1 million informal settlement, Manshit Nasser, and actually put money in to send in a team of graduate students to assess every single building in that neighborhood and came up with maps. But then the cabinet changed. So that's the reality. So, but you do it one step at a time. And certainly, the governors I worked with, they were wonderful people, understood the dynamics of waste management financing. They understood very well. When I was Minister of Environment, they were always asking me for trucks. Send us more trucks. But they knew that they would be mishandled, they would be robbed, they would not be maintained, that they would go into some dump site soon. However, you're a governor for 3 or 4 years. You have to quick do it now. So I'm trying to be sympathetic to government people because it's not as easy as we think once you're in there, and there are so many complications. However, the issue of materials management linked to public health is the message I tried to come across. And the ones that I worked with, they're not there anymore. Huh? No, you know, local government people change all the time, especially when you're a governor, you're appointed, not elected. But now that I'm outside, I'm still talking to government, new people, new faces, but saying the same thing. I think maybe the persistence of the message is very important, whether you're in government or not. You have to persist, and repeat yourself until you die.
Dr. Leila, first, thank you for this excellent work, excellent presentation. I have a question. Did anybody study, whether formally through the government or whatever, actually using this waste in the housing process, in the housing, in the construction? Did anybody go through this or?
Yes, not the government, let me tell you.
Okay.
What these people do in their ingenious way, I mean, I don't want to romanticize, by the way. There are a lot of health hazards associated with what they do, okay? Let's be clear on this. But to upgrade them, you don't kill them, huh? What they did is, what they do right now is experiment, research. This neighborhood, this one of the 6, Manshit Nasser, is a research agency. It's a university. Every month, a new product comes out of their enterprises. The amalgam they come out with, they mix. It could be cassette player, plastic, HDPE with LDPE with PET, they mix. And they really don't know what they're doing. But at the end of the day, they give it to a contractor, a construction contractor. And he knows, he takes it to a lab, he tests it, I hope, for flammability, for resilience, blah, 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 and then he says, go, I will buy this from you. It goes into the housing sector, the construction sector, without anybody officially studying it or saying, use these percentages of X, Y, and Z. Yes, it is mind-boggling, because I've known these recyclers for 40 years, and I know that 40 years ago, he used to produce coat hangers, مثلا. And then a few years later, it was pelletizing, and then a few years later, he's expanding. He said, now, are you producing pellets with the same inputs that you were doing last year? No. I'm doing now with CDs. Why? Because there's a lot of CDs around. Who do you sell it to? So-and-so. Who's he? A contractor. Invariably, a construction contractor. And they use it for insulation. Now, like I said, I hope it's non-flammable, it's tested, blah, 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 but it does go into construction sector. Now, there are people in the Delta who are doing a formal industry to turn PET into building blocks. Now, that would never fly in the carbon offset market. That's another story, but they're trying, okay? However, to tell you that there's a formal effort of people studying the materials and looking into whether they will be good for construction, no. We haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, I think we need to talk after this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's talk governance. You've expressed a level of frustration, if I may put it that way, with the way governments work. But at the same time, you've said from the other end, these people are self-organized and things like that. And I'm curious, what is it that prevents governments from having conversations that may lead to better collaboration with these groups of people so that the city is managed better? These people also, to some extent, can have better environments for which to work, because these are essential services. They are the lungs of the city. They are everything that keeps us moving. When you talk about the levels of waste, I can tell that from the hotel every morning. They are delivering things that would take an entire clan to eat. And therefore, in the last couple of days I've been around, probably I've created so many problems for Cairo.
Yes.
But what is it that prevents governments or maybe from engaging these people and then say, can we work out something that can be able to be empowering or can work for the city and the people and everyone else that is involved?
In order for the government to talk to people of that social class, would have to be a government that has in its DNA this concept of participatory development. We talk about it all the time, but government, it's not in our DNA participatory. No, we have to get things done now, quickly, this way, legally. Get your taxes, move the people, it's not in the DNA of any government, by the way, okay? So what do we need? We need interlocutors, intermediaries, to keep pressing the issue. One such global interlocutor for slums, for instance, is SDI, Slum Dwellers International. They've been at this for years, decades, and they've established 30 or more chapters all over the world, Latin America and Africa. They started out in India and Mumbai, but they're all over. They now talk to government. In this country, we may have a few such interlocutors, but it always depends on the mood of the government, the political. Now we have a war at our doorstep. We're going to talk about these things. It depends on a lot of things to get government to listen and to say, they're never going to speak directly to these people. No way. They speak two different languages. But that middle interlocutor is, in my view, what has worked in the past. In the 1980s, I remember, we didn't have sewage. And we desperately needed, because we were all on septic tanks and it was overflowing. It was a disaster, and the neighborhood was growing. So back then, it was for the first time that we had local parliamentarian elections. And so they understood that if this man was to be elected by them, he would pressure the government into bringing in sanitation. So this is democracy at work in the third world. They went round to everybody who had an ID card, took them to get a voter registration card. Now that takes organizing. And then they put them all in a bag and gave it to him and said, here are votes, you make sure you get the sanitation now. Democracy. A few months later, he was elected. We got our sanitation. Yeah, he delivered, of course. They would have killed him if he hadn't.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to go. Yeah. Thank you for your really inspiring presentation. I think the responses also clarified a lot of things. I work a lot in the informal sector, and I am usually talking a lot about the power of the grassroots organizations and what they can do in these spaces. But now I want to give a rather pessimistic comment about it, because I want to hear your thought about it. First, I think one of the greatest critiques of self-governance is the fact that it sometimes isolates governments. I think self-governance evolves as a result of informal settlements being stigmatized by government, not recognized as areas that can offer innovation and experimentation for the city. But now this self-organization is growing so strong that they don't even need the government anymore.
Wow.
I have cases of Nairobi, and now I'm working in a big informal settlement where they're like, we have partners, we have networks. If the government wants to come in, fine. If it don't want, we'll still do it. So when I'm looking at governance systems that really work for cities, because even though these groups are very well organized, there are for sure things that they cannot do, which is only government's responsibility. So I wonder how you think about blending self-governance with formal governance, so that now we do not turn government into the marginalized actors? And then second question, you alluded to it. I was wondering if possibly we are romanticizing struggle as resilience, because some of these groups end up organizing themselves to recycle waste and to do all these informal activities because they don't have an alternative, not because they want to do it.
I see your question. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, these are wonderful questions. I've never been asked these before. So the first one about self-governance, isolating government. I've not experienced that before, and I never actually framed it like that, because like you said, at the end of the day, there are many things only government can do. So when we talk about self-governance, it's always within a contained sphere, not everything. Security, you have to have police, otherwise you will have gangs, sanitation, schools, and so on. And so rather than fear the power of self-governance, isolating government, it's always been the fear of the powerful people in the self-governance sphere taking over the interests of their compatriots behind them. This is what I've seen. In neighborhoods like these, after a while, you always have the rich poor. And they become so powerful that and loud that when they negotiate, soi-disant on behalf of the neighborhood, it's always on behalf of their self-interest. And they turn into capitalists like everybody else, you know? That's what I fear the most. But to think that self-governance will isolate government, no, there's no isolation risk. You can always reach out to government, and government can always reach out to people through whatever mediation channels, if they so desire. That's the first one. The second is alluding to, sorry, can you repeat that again? Yeah, romanticizing, sorry?
It's about romanticizing. It's kind of linked to, I think, one group in South America that was saying not all us resilience.
Oh, it's struggle. Well, in these stories, now I'm talking about Cairo, okay, because they're so advanced. They've been doing this for 70 years, longer than anyone, anywhere on this planet. I promise you. I know, because I've been in the sector for 50 years. I've been in it for a long time. So I travel a lot. I go to South America, I go to Asia, I go to Africa, and connected, you know. This is the longest story of urban waste management in the world. 70 years, yes. So, yes, it was a struggle, of course, at first, but not now. Now they have the wherewithal to move out, to change occupation, because their sons and daughters have all gotten an education. The people who started in the early 50s on a donkey cart, living in cardboard shacks, raising pigs only, and living in horror, are now business people. Why aren't you moving out? Do you want your son to do this? Yes, because it's a business. It's not dirt, it's money. And look at the house I built, and how do you think I paid for his college, huh? Type of thing. So no, nowadays it's not a struggle anymore. They are so proud of their recycling know-how. Of course, they don't like the filthy conditions they live in. That's where we shouldn't romanticize. But rather than say, toss this all out and turn it into a formal European model, we tried that, by the way, and it was a failure, or move them out, can we not think of creative urban models, brand new ones, that say, in our city we have enclaves that used to be slums, but are now recycling neighborhoods. And when you come to visit us, you won't walk through filthy streets or see women squatting and sorting mixed organic waste with their bare hands. No, you're going to see something of dignity. This is what we're trying to promote nowadays.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Laila, for the presentation. I wanted to ask about the health risks. How do you see if there are any plans to reduce these risks without interfering with the self-governance issue in the community?
Yes, I've been at it for 30 years. I mean, I've been this story for 50, but at that, for 30. How? In 92, APE, that you may have visited yesterday, we started a little pilot in Maadi, Dir el-Malek, and Zawiya al-Hamra. High income, low income, middle income, okay? Dir el-Malek is like Ramses Street, okay? Will people, the research question was this, will residents, you, accept to throw their garbage in their kitchen in 2 bins only, food and non-food? Why? Because the idea was, if yes, then we would have a dual waste collection system. One for food only and goes straight to the composting plant. And I tell you, the government has spent so much money on hundreds of composting plants. They're all khurda now, they're just junks. And then another waste stream that would collect the non-organic, and these people would take it. That would reduce the health risk. It was a Ford Foundation funded project, by the way. And the person who headed that research project was the late Marie Assad. She is a fellow of the AUC. She led that research. And the results were unbelievable. Health risk would come down by 70%, and the living conditions and the income from recyclables would go up. We presented the findings to the Ministry of Environment in the 90s, but as you know. So then when I got into office, I tried it again, and actually the Prime Minister backed me all the way, used to call up the TV stations and can you put these ads on source segregation free of charge? They would do it for a week or 2, and then of course there's no money in it. Put that on, but it would start with you. And why are we not saying 4 bins? Number one, our kitchens are small. We don't all live in compounds, huh? We're urban, middle class, and low. That's number one. Number two, if we look at the experiment of Europe on 4 segregation, it's failed. You go talk to any waste expert, seriously, in any big European city, except Germany. Let's not talk about Germany, okay? They're different people. They will tell you, people are confused even when you have them color-coded and branded and everything. And because the resident doesn't throw efficiently, then the next step is not able to generate value efficiently. It takes more money to separate, so they end up in an incinerator. And so we said, let's not complicate it for Egyptians, we're not Germans, and our kitchens are small, and we already have people who want the recyclables. Let them continue doing what they're doing, and you know, if these people didn't make money from recycling, as a government, we would have the burden of providing jobs, education, health, housing, livelihoods for millions of people, because it reverberates. Thank you. We'll talk.